Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Savante Myrick. I am President and CEO of People for the American Way. A great honor and privilege to be here with a coalition of organizations that fight for fair courts. Fatima, I want to introduce our special guest last, if that's okay, as I ask her to kick us off. If you don't know Fatima, you absolutely should. Rule one I've learned in organizing in this world is just do what Fatima suggests and everything turns out okay, because the National Women's Law Center is brilliant and looks out in the end for all of us. We're also going to hear from Lena from the Leadership Council on Civil and Human Rights, an organization that holds us all together, even when sometimes against our will we do not want to be held together. Is that a fair thing to say? The Alliance for Justice is an organization just alongside People for the American Way, has been fighting and will continue to fight for us. And we truly, truly appreciate it. And then, of course, Demetria from the NAACP. What can you say about the NAACP Legal Defense Fund? I don't know, but I'll tell you what I can say about it. Me, my two older brothers, and my little sister would not have the opportunities to live the American dream that we have without the 75 plus year history of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, period. Marge Baker and Meg Simons are here from People for the American Way. We are so proud to work for an organization with 1.5 million members and supporters. Our number one member and supporter was our founder, Norman Lear, who founded this organization 40 years ago, 44 years ago. I think he was like 60. And he thought to himself, I don't know, maybe I only have a few more years to go. What do I want my legacy to be after fighting in World War II and creating the Jeffersons and All in the Family and Good Times and changing the way we think about race and culture in America? Norman lived to 101 years old, of course, passing just last December. And it was at his home in his living room some 8 years ago that I first got to meet Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren, there's much conversation right now about where are we going to find our messengers. Senator Warren is one of the best, not political messengers, one of the best communicators I've ever seen in my entire life. She makes what is important sound important. She makes what is complicated understandable without ever talking down to people. She can elevate issues and, of course, the audience. And because of that, she's achieved several incredible things, getting elected, of course, to the Senate in Massachusetts, despite not being a Kennedy. Wasn't sure that was legal, allowed. The creation of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau would be, for most public servants, I think it's one of the most impressive things that any one public servant has done in America in the last 50 years. That alone would be enough. And most impressive of all, Senator Warren was a Harvard professor, but somehow not a jerk. So with that, I'd like to ask her to talk about the courts, because look, we just went through a presidential election.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars are spent on these elections, probably a little bit too much money and probably a little bit too much attention. When legislation is passed through the legislature, quite a lot of money and attention goes to it. But my staff informs me that the judiciary is in fact a co-equal branch of government. And there's enormous power there that goes well under the radar. And corporate interests and special interests have clued into that and have found ways to control these courts. Senator Warren's been on the front lines of fighting back and making sure that the American people know why it's important that we fight for these courts, including for the next couple months, because Joe Biden was elected to be president for 4 full years, and he's still president now. So I thank you, Senator Warren, and invite you to speak. Thanks again so much for being here.
Oh, Savante, what a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. That's just far too generous, but I really, really do appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who turned in here today, who's tuning in with us. I hold People for the American Way in a special place in my heart. I still remember when I said something about the social contract and how people didn't build it all on their own. And Norman Lear happened to hear that. And I came home and there was a voice message on our answering machine and it said, "Hi, this is Norman Lear. I saw a video of what you said And I want to talk to you. And we were off and running. And People for the American Way is still in that spirit of what we do in service to make this a better country. So I am really, really glad to be here with all of you today to kick off this important meeting. I want to start with the fact that Savante just mentioned, and that is it's important to remember that Democrats in the Senate still have power, and how we use that power in the final weeks of this Congress really sets the tone for how we're going to fight back for the next 4 years. The most impactful use of our power is to confirm the pending nominees to judicial places. We need to get those judges in. Joe Biden nominated them, and we need to get them confirmed. We also need to get the regulators confirmed, the ones particularly that cannot be removed by Donald Trump. One single judge can be responsible for hundreds of rulings that hurt or help working families. And look, I understand that there are a lot of people right now that they just keep saying the United States Supreme Court has been captured by an extremist wing. We just have to give up on this and go somewhere else with our energies. That is the wrong approach here. We are talking about lifetime appointments at the Court of Appeals, lifetime appointments in the district courts, and the reminder, the vast majority of cases in the federal system are heard and resolved and finished in the district court. And the next majority of cases are heard and resolved at the Court of Appeals. So yeah, we got to focus on the Supreme Court. We got to get some balance back in the Supreme Court. But it is important to get those judges through who are district court and Court of Appeals judges. I know it should go without saying, but unfortunately, we live in a world now where we need to say over and over and over how much we need fair, independent judges who will make decisions based on the law, not based on favors for special interests and wealthy individuals. After Trump lost in 2020, the Senate confirmed 14 more of his nominees. That was after the election was called, including judges who went on to hand down terrible decisions. I'm sorry, that's a term of art here. Terrible decisions on climate change, on trans rights, on COVID protections, on whistleblowers, and the biggie, on presidential accountability. Other Trump judges have repeatedly ruled against working families on economic issues, striking down rules that would have allowed millions more Americans to get overtime, that would have let millions of Americans cancel student loan debt, that would have capped credit card late fees and helped millions of Americans, that would have prohibited employers from exploiting workers using non-compete clauses in employment contracts. All of those are things that Biden did that would have had a material impact on families' lives and their pocketbooks. And a handful of Trump judges have stopped every one of those dead in their tracks. So we know the importance of these judges. We know the importance of keeping up the fight. I'm going to keep pushing right now until our pending nominees are confirmed. When the Republicans were in charge, they ran all the way through the tape. That was the phrase that then Leader McConnell used. And Democrats need to do the same, not just with judicial nominees, but also by confirming nominees like financial regulators, members of the U.S. Sentencing Commission, D.C. judges. The Senate has a constitutional duty to fill vacant positions in the administration with qualified and thoughtful regulators who cannot be fired by a future president. I am proud of the work that the Senate has done to confirm President Biden's nominees, but this is the moment we need to keep pushing to run through the tape. And then starting next year and beyond, we need to focus on holding Donald Trump and his entire administration accountable for any of the decisions by Trump nominees that are bad for working families. And there is no place better to start launching that fight than right here with People for the American Way. I want you to know I'm in that fight all the way, and I am counting on you to be a part of that fight as well. So thank you for having me here, Svante, and let's have a good discussion.
Thank you so much. Needed. We need a fighter this month. It's been a tough month, and just as always, seeing you speak, being in your presence, reminds me why it's important. I actually published an op-ed in the Hill this week with the title, "Why Not Just Get Rid of the Senate?" And of course, the point was, hey, if Thune and the rest of the Republicans are just going to abdicate the responsibility, go home and allow recess appointments, then let's just end the charade right now and get rid of the Senate. Yes. More than one person, though, texted me and say, hey, clearly they did not read the article, just the headline, imagine. And they said, get rid of the Senate? Liz Warren's in the Senate. We need the Senate. Okay, so is it okay if I actually start backwards with the last point that I would love to dig into, because I know a lot of our members listening here are very worried about what happens after January 20th. We've had conversations with Leader Schumer, who believes that there are real divisions in the Senate Republicans that have been papered over by the cult of personality that is Donald Trump. Everybody's just been too afraid of him. Everybody's just been getting along because he punishes those who don't. Do you think that that's the same way? And if so, those of us who want to make sure that bad judges aren't appointed, and by bad we mean unfair, impartial, and I can't believe I have to say this, but those who might be taking bribes from billionaires, I can't believe I have to say that nowadays. If we want to stop judges next year, if we want to put pressure to stop these judges, I know a lot of folks are like, well, the Republicans control the entire Senate. There's nothing we can do. Is that how you feel, or is there something that we can actually do next year?
No, there's a lot we can do. And here's how I think of it. It's we've got two different approaches to this, but it's going to take a lot of effort. One is the very noisy approach. What? You're going to name that guy? Are you kidding me? The one who's wearing the paper hat and the googly glasses and the, right? You know, whatever it is you're going to say about this.
No, Kavanaugh was already confirmed, by the way.
That's right.
He's
already in.
Yeah, he's already in.
But the point is, there will be some for which it is really important to raise hell. And the louder the hell is, the better it is. And the reason for that is sometimes you can raise enough hell, you can stop one. That a couple of Republicans who are up for re-election in 2026 say, ew, I'm not sure, I'm going to need votes from women, or
imagine.
Or brown people. So I'm going to be, a little about whether or not I really want to sign on to this. So sometimes it's going to be make all the noise you can, bang on as many pots and pans as you can. And we will coordinate on that. When's the right time? But the other time is the day by day by day by day quiet version, where you build the relationships with the Republican offices to be able to say to them, there's a bad one coming down the pike, get him pushed off the assembly line before he causes trouble, or she causes trouble. And the 1-2 means maybe, sometimes, not always, but you can knock some of them out. The second thing you can do, or third thing, I guess, because both, it's an inside-outside, is, it's a loss when somebody really horrible gets confirmed. But if they get confirmed with no push, no noise, no cost, then it's that much easier to confirm the next guy who is even worse. And you think, it couldn't get any worse? It can get worse. If we haven't learned that lesson during the Trump years, then shame on us. So think of it as the fight is a value anyway. So we're going to need to raise noise. We're going to need to do the quiet over and over, put pressure on these guys. But more than anything else, we're going to need to demonstrate that every time they put one of these jerks up, that there really is a group out there that's going to raise hell about it and make them pay a price. No more freebies. I'm tired of freebies. Not with this administration. Nope.
Amen. God bless you. God bless you so much. And God bless you too for, your staff is probably furious with me because we were supposed to let you go and you have very important things to do. And as always, you are far too generous. We just love you. And on behalf of the entire coalition, thank you, Senator Warren, for leading the way. And what Norman said to me then 8 years ago remains true now. He pulled me aside and said, that's not just one to follow, that's one to follow.
Uh-oh.
And he had real deep affection for you. And we'll be rooting for you on. Yeah, we'll be rooting for you. And we need your voice right now. So
right.
Thank you
We're
so much.
We're going to do this.
Yes.
Thank you, Savante. Good to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to dig in with the rest of the coalition leaders now, because these organizations, if I must toot our own horns, from People for the American Way, Legal Defense Fund, the Leadership Conference, and National Women's Law Center, are the coalition. Oh, Janae too, who couldn't be here. We are the ones leading this fight, right? And I know I'm speaking to the choir. If you're already on this telebriefing, you might be thinking, geez, you need 4 organizations to fight for judicial nominees and judicial appointments. Isn't that overkill? If I could show you what Leonard Leo and the right-wing infrastructure have built, the absolutely colossal machine that they built to make sure that despite losing all but 2 presidential elections since 1988, they control 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices. You would see that that we all here are necessary, but not yet sufficient. So I want to dig into that. But first, if I could start with Fatima, I want to ask a question of you, and then Lena and Demetria. The folks that we have on the call right now who are listening are all leaders, right? Like the people in their house and in the book club and at the local Democratic Party, like we have chairs of local Democratic parties, and all these leaders. They have to go out now and talk to the people who follow them about why this matters, why the courts matter, why they should be calling their senators, why this makes a difference. What sort of talking points would you arm these leaders with, Fatima? What would you say? Here's how to communicate this. Not just that the nominees have to be appointed, but the type of nominees that have to be appointed, because the Biden administration, I have to say, has done a phenomenal job at your urging of not just appointing judges, but like phenomenal judges. It used to be you had to be a corporate lawyer or a prosecutor, and now these public defenders and civil rights attorneys and all sorts of fascinating folks are on the bench now. Well, Fatima, why does that matter, and how do we? What should the leaders go home and say to their constituents?
Yeah, I think I was fascinated by the conversation with you and Senator Warren, because I think you got right to the heart of the heart, right? If you were thinking about what to say in a short phone call with a senator from your state, I think you need to be reminding them that they still have power in this very moment. So that's the first thing. And that every single day over the next few years, we, those of us who care about freedom and justice, are going to be thinking about our courts, not just hoping that our courts will do their job, but thinking about that makeup. And so I would, in making that call, I would connect it to the issue that you care about and that you see yourself as fighting for. So at the Law Center, we work on a wide range of gender justice issues, and we spend a lot of time in the courts around a range of issues related to reproductive freedom. And if you care about reproductive freedom as an individual, and if your senator cares about reproductive freedom, these judicial nominees and every vacant seat that we leave for the Trump administration to appoint is a reproductive freedom seat. You're making a decision. Trump has been very, very clear, and the Federalist Society have been very, very clear about the types of judges that they think should make up those seats. They're very different from the judges that Biden has been able to appoint, right? So it is the most professionally diverse set of judges that we have seen, but it is a range of judges that have records on civil rights, on actually working on reproductive freedom, on labor and beyond. So I would start there.
Yeah. And if you know Fatima, you know that the call she keeps getting is probably Chuck Schumer. I mean, like, please.
Also, probably my 13-year-old.
Yeah,
trolling me.
Both equally bossy, frankly. Lena, if I could ask from the Leadership Conference perspective. So I think most folks know and understand what the Leadership Conference is and has done for the civil rights movement over the last several decades. But if you don't, you should know that it's the group that organizes the groups. It's the spine for so much of our action and activism. Why do you think, Lena, given that, and forgive me again for leading the witness here, why have the courts become so important there? Is it because they happen to intersect across all areas of social and civil rights?
Svante, first, thanks so much for having us and actually embodying what that coalition work does, because we can only do this when we do this together. And so in the Leadership Conference's 75-year history, this has been something we've worked on. And this is something that the generations before us did. It's something that generations after us have to do. And we always have to be committed to this. So it's something, we've consistently paid a lot of attention to. And for decades, people who have been appointed to these seats and who have been judges, there is this perception that they have to be white, they have to be male, they have to have a prosecutorial or perhaps corporate law background. And that's what's considered to be judicial or fair and neutral. And we know that that is just not the case. What Fatima said is exactly right. Each one of these judicial seats decides issues related to our reproductive health care, to the fundamental right to abortion, to who gets paid equally, whether or not they're able to seek any redress in court for any wrongdoings that happen to them, and whether or not we have clean air and clean water and so much more. So you're right, Svante, in that it really does take a whole coalition who cares about every single one of these issues, and it is embodied in every single one of these vacancies. And I think that there's two things right now I would want to equip leaders in the community, which you all are, to do, is to have these conversations. And there's two things that I think are urgent. One is to have this short-term conversation that Senator Warren was talking about. The Senate cannot take its foot off the gas pedal and must do everything it can in the next few weeks to confirm all of the pending nominees. There are 4 circuit court nominees right now who embody that experience that Fatima's talking about, that civil rights experience, with Carla Campbell in the 6th Circuit, who is somebody who comes with experience protecting working people and their families in unions. We have Mr. Adil Mungi in the 3rd Circuit, who's been nominated for a seat in New Jersey, and he has spent a lot of his career doing pro bono work to help advance the religious freedoms of so many in the community. And then we have in the 1st Circuit, Julia Lipez, somebody who also has a number of supporters in her home state of Maine, as well as Ryan Park, who would be the first Asian American to be confirmed to the 4th Circuit, and someone who's currently serving as a Solicitor General there, and someone who has been on the right side of history in North Carolina, University of North Carolina's affirmative action policies. These are the types of people we have been wanting to see, that generations before us have tried to see, and that as a coalition, we have made happen. And this administration under President Biden's leadership has really done a tremendous job. The Senate Judiciary Committee under the leadership of Chair Durbin has processed these. And now it is up to just Leader Schumer to make sure every single one of these pending nominees gets confirmed. It's about the numbers, but it's more than that. It's about the quality. And as Senator Warren and you have said, that we need to be ready to fight forward. And that means being able to hold this incoming administration accountable, but that means we need to bear witness. And that means convincing your neighbors, convincing your family, convincing others that this matters to you. As Fatima said, talk to them about what matters to you, because the courts and the judges who sit on them are going to be deciding those issues, whether or not you are a plaintiff or a defendant in a case, or you are just impacted by their decisions. You can't give up the fight. You have to bear witness so you can even know how to hold people accountable, to have that fight, to make sure it doesn't get worse, and to make sure that we are able to do what we can to hold the line so that in future generations, they don't have to crawl back from even worse conditions. And it's a terrible place in some ways to be, but also one that can really, I think, bring folks together as we are fighting together.
Oh, so well said. As always, Lena. And if I could use that last point, Dimitri, to lead into you then. So I think often voters know, and we're going to get into what we're like asking specifically folks to do in the next couple of weeks, like why this really matters and what we think we can achieve in the next couple of weeks. But Lena mentions like why this matters, and NAACP Legal Defense Fund knows better than most. So could you tell us, like, people understand what presidents can and can't do, right? That they can invade, they can start wars, they can issue executive orders, Congress passes budgets, they can pass legislation. I think folks are often surprised how many rights have been won in the judiciary and how many rights have been lost in the judiciary. Dimitri, could you talk to us like very specifically about what rights have been won by fair courts, what rights we could lose if we don't have fair courts, and why it's important that the NAACP is in this fight?
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate you mentioning, Svante, earlier our history. We're facing next year our 85th anniversary, actually. And so it's been 85 years almost where we've been fighting for racial justice, fighting for Black communities. You know, our founder was a justice in the Supreme Court, right? And that relied upon confirmation process and nomination processes. But I just really want people to understand how very local this can be. People can say, I'll never don the doors of a federal court in my life. But guess what? Some of the cases that we even litigated here at LDF that actually are in the southern parts of the country, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, those types of places, are very local types of issues. When we think about a case we had in Alabama, Jefferson County School Board case, where the lower court actually incorrectly permitted a community to partially secede from the school district, right? And we found, and the circuit court there found that was due to intentional racial discrimination. So while we definitely succeeded in the Supreme Court with Brown versus Board of Ed many decades ago, some of these fights are still happening on other levels, right? And so we've got to pay attention to that. And so also on a very, sticking with education, on a very local level, how things impact folks. We look at the case that we had in Virginia, for instance, Fairfax County School Board case, Coalition for TJ case. And that was a situation where there was a reversal of an earlier ruling by a Virginia district court. And the Fourth Circuit actually held that there was a new admissions policy. And this new admission policy was going to create more equal access for Black and Latinx and underserved folks. And guess what? They had been fighting against the fact that they were called an unconstitutional policy, but in fact, that circuit court found that it was constitutional. So we may be thinking about Brown versus Board of Ed, but those fights still continue in the education realm when we're talking about equality and things of that nature. And so those are things that we actually could lose, to your point. And so they're very, very local types of issues. So these courts matter. District courts matter, and circuit courts absolutely matter. Everything doesn't go to the Supreme Court. We may be throwing our hands up saying, oh, forget it, we've lost the Supreme Court. There are lots of cases that stop at the circuit court level. So we've got to pay attention to those too.
Mm-hmm. I can't thank the three of you enough, because I feel like you've laid out so plainly and clearly. In 2017, I was like happily and comfortably mayor of Ithaca, going do, fix sidewalks, everything's fine. When I got elected, I got really freaked out. Trump, that is. I got really freaked out because I was like, we could really seriously go backwards in a lot of things. The courts are what ended the miscegenation laws. The courts did that. right? It wasn't legislation. My mother was allowed to marry my father because of the courts. I was allowed to go to school because of the courts, not because of legislation. Women had access to reproductive rights because of the courts, not because of legislation. And I was really worried. I was like, these are fundamental civil rights. We could lose them. And all of my normie friends were like, stop being such a weenie. Stop freaking out. This is not going to happen. And we found out, particularly with Dobbs, that it can. And if you and if you think that Trump knows nothing about Project 2025 and what they intend to do and what else they intend to roll back, well then, I've got a floor of Trump Tower that I'd like to sell you. So I want to actually bring in Keith here to talk about this point. I want to thank Demetria and Lena and Fatima, as always, for being such great partners and great communicators. And what I want to ask Keith from the Alliance for Justice is, you were here last time. Only 2 presidents have ever returned to office. So this is interesting. Grover Cleveland came back after losing, and now Trump is back. You were on the front lines of a lot of those nomination fights. What did you learn from that? What should we all be thinking? And what do you think, maybe most importantly, what do you think the MAGA faction learned from those fights as well?
Great question. And have to start out saying on the front lines, right alongside you all, People for the American Way, LDF, the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, National Women's Law Center, and so many others. And it really is that so many others that we're going to be leaning on in the years to come. The for better or worse aspect is we don't have to do a lot of guessing about what's to come in the next 4 years. In 2016, Trump said that he was going to nominate justices committed to overturning Roe v. Wade. 6 years later, it happened. We have seen from his rhetoric on the campaign trail since then that it is only going to be worse this time around. But what we learned during the first Trump administration is that when we come together, we speak out and we demonstrate crystal clearly what the stakes are and what the threat of harm to our communities is, we can win some, absolutely. We can keep some of the worst nominees off the bench and out of lifetime tenures on our federal courts. And in the long term, we can build a movement that comes back even stronger and ready to fight when we have friendlier administrations. Every time we make clear how unacceptable a Trump nominee is, we are likewise saying, and here are our expectations for the judges we want to see on the bench. In terms of what the MAGA majority is looking at right now, they are emboldened. I think Trump's cabinet picks demonstrate that. Thankfully, though, we will not have an Attorney General Gates. But if you are nervous about an Attorney General Gates, imagine a Matt Gaetz on the bench for a lifetime tenure. So what we know is that nominees will come forward who have demonstrated records hostile to our rights and a commitment to dismantling the progress we've made for the last 4 years, the last 40 years, and even further. But what Senator Warren said is what to hold on to. We fight like hell, and it matters. And when we come together and we show the breadth and the unity to show that we are not backing down from demanding justice, we can win and we can build that movement to go into the future even stronger.
And that's Keith, could you just say the last part again? Because I am angry. I seem to be stuck in the anger part of the grief cycle or whatever. But the thing I'm most convinced of, and the thing I think folks need to hear, is that we are not powerless. Like, we have tools. There are things we can do, and if we do them, so just simply say that again. We can fight back.
Not just we can fight back, we will fight back. We have started fighting back. Every phone call that someone makes to their senator today to say confirm every pending judicial nominee is one less vacancy that Trump will inherit. We are already at a little bit of a better starting point in that in 2017 on day one, Trump inherited 108 judicial vacancies to fill. Thanks to the movement we built in those 4 years and have continued, and the progress we've made in the last 4 years, he's set to inherit less than half of that to even start. So if you're looking for some hope, we have some. I also want to make it clear that there will be hard days. There will absolutely be losses. There will be terrible people installed into lifetime tenures on our federal courts, but we will also win. With people speaking out and sharing the real human stories behind the harm at stake in our communities on the line with each judicial nominee, we defeated some nominees. When the parents of transgender youth spoke out against Jeff Mateer's nomination, who called trans youth part of Satan's plan, we won. His nomination was defeated. When people in North Carolina spoke out about Thomas Farr's record of defending a North Carolina gerrymandering law that a federal court ruled was so discriminatory it targeted Black voters with almost surgical precision, we won. When Brett Talley was nominated, who defended the KKK and was a ghost hunter, we might have won that just on the surface, but we also spoke out and we won. And so when we fight not just that nominee that's directly in front of us, but the ones right behind them. And then with the even longer view, the ones that we are making the case for in the future. It's no coincidence that we built a movement during Trump's 4 years. And then in the Biden years, we had the wind at our backs to see outstanding labor lawyers, civil rights advocates, a record number of Black women and LGBTQ judges, because we use our opposition to say these are the issues that matter to us and these are the communities that matter to us in our courts.
And I just have to say, the left is the left, whatever that means in this case. Honestly, with fair courts, it's not even a question of left or right, right? These are supposed to be just fair judges. Fair judges will not take away interracial marriage. They will not take away same-sex marriage. They will just call balls and strikes. Fair judges will not. Anyway, I won't even get into all that. But in organizations in progressive spaces are, I think, maligned often for not working well enough together, or for competing against each other, especially if they have overlapping areas of interest. People for the American Way and Alliance for Justice, I'm just very, very proud of how well we work together and support each other, given the similarities of our interests. And Keith, you've been a very big part of that. So I want to thank you. And welcome the other very big part of that, which is Marge Baker. She's our vice president, and Meg, welcome. Meg is one of our most talented organizers, digitally and field. Marge Baker is one of the smartest and most accomplished lawyers in the world, not only working for Senator Whitehouse, but going to Yale. Was it Yale or Harvard, Marge? Yale, okay.
It was with Senator Warren.
That was a close call. With Senator Warren's husband, I think. At a time where women were, of course, very underrepresented there. And talk about public interest, has spent her entire career fighting for the public interest. The fact that a person of this intelligence and pedigree was walking through the halls yesterday of the Senate with sleeping bags, passing out the sleeping bags to senators, saying, hey, we know you might want to go home. You think maybe nobody's watching anymore. It's December, the election's over, we're tired, we have fundraisers to go to. Maybe we can get away with getting out of here. The fact that it was, of course, Marge and Meg and the team is why not only did they meet with us and accept the sleeping bags with a smile, but they understood that we were speaking on behalf of a lot of Americans. That we were just saying, hey, look, if you do decide to stay and continue fighting and confirm the judges all the way to the finish line, you will not be doing it in silence and obscurity. A lot of Americans and voters will notice and will appreciate it. So can I ask the both of you, because you know this issue better than anybody, what happens next? Wait, sorry. Let me invert those questions. First, what do we have to do like right now? What would you like, Marge and Meg, what would you like everybody on this call to do tomorrow and the day after that, right? Like, so what do we have to do this week to win this fight? And then I have another question.
So I'll start, and we might actually have some pictures of that sleeping bag delivery escapade. So we should call them up. But what we need people to do is call their senators, and tell them to stay in. And as Senator Warren said, run as hard as they can through the end of the tape. This Congress does not end until January 2nd. The Senate can stay in till January 2nd, perhaps take a few days off for the holidays, but they can stay in until January 2nd to confirm all the pending nominees, which includes the really incredible 4 Circuit Court of Appeals nominees that we've been talking about, that Lena mentioned when she was talking, incredible nominees that deserve to sit on the bench because of their qualifications, and each one of those that we confirm is one less Court of Appeals nominee, the Trump seat that Trump will be able to fill. So that's the most important thing. Make the phone.
Let me devil's advocate real quick, and again, just to lead the witness, so that you. I'm on this call. I'm like, call my senator. How many times have people asked me to call my senator? Does it actually work to call your senator?
Yes, it does. It does. It does. It works because we know, because we've been driving calls in and they're hearing it. And that's why they're confirming as many as they are right now, frankly. So the more they hear, look, you're doing a good job, but it's not done. And it's not done until you get to these Court of Appeals. It does absolutely work. We know it works. Yeah. And
when you worked in the Senate, I worked in elected office, particularly when it's an issue like this, right? Like, you're not trying to convince them, hey, judges are important. You're just trying to help them and their team understand when they're putting their schedule together for the next couple of weeks. Like, what's the top priority right now? Senator wants to go home for vacation. The Rotary Club of Wabagash wants him to come speak. When they're just putting together and then they see all these calls.
That's right.
That's when they go, okay, we have to prioritize this.
You work in a Senate office, and you count. You know how many calls are coming into the main office, how many calls are coming into their district offices. That's something the senator will ask just about every morning. Where are the calls? How many calls are coming in, and who are they coming from, and what are they saying? Right, Meg?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our friend Charlie has those photos pulled up. I think it was a really amazing event. I want to see those real quick if we can. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, look at you. Hey.
Look
at Corey. Corey's just,
yes.
Corey's such a trooper. Yeah, Senator Booker. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so not only did we meet the Senate staff, but some of the senators even were able to meet with us and really hear about why these organizations who represent millions of people across the country, were there and in their office and being like, hi, we know there's like 7 holiday parties this week, and you've got your grandkids' graduation and whatever, you still have to do this, right? We're still actually here. We're watching. We're paying attention. And like, you have to take these votes because these judges, like, it can feel, and I can hear you. I can hear you through the phone, right? Saying like, oh, but like, judges are so like wonky and like boring and nobody cares. And when I try to talk to my friends, they're like, I have other things to deal with. Like, I have to go see my in-laws for the holidays. I love my in-laws, but like, I know that's a common trope. But like,
I think that's especially on your mind.
It is. It's because I drive across the street to see my family. That's why it's on my mind.
Yeah.
But when people get kind of their eyes gloss over when you talk about judges, but the thing is, it's our everyday lives that these people are getting to make decisions on. And most people think about the Supreme Court when they think about judges, right? But those 9 people decide like roughly 1% of the cases that are heard, that are like appealed to them. The rest of the thousands of cases that move through the courts every year are decided by these judges that we're arguing about right now and that we're calling on our senators to confirm right now. And especially, so I did some math because I am a crazy person. And there are about 100 million people that will be impacted by the 4 circuit court judges that we're asking the Senate to confirm before they leave. 100 million people.
Right.
That's bananas. We can't let those 100 million people like be under the like sway and like decisions of a Trump judge if we have the opportunity to make sure they aren't. right? Like we know what happens when Trump gets to put judges on the bench. We've seen it. We get Kaczmarek. We get our Kaczmarek is in my home state, so nobody needs to know his name, but he was one of the judges who ruled on the Buford person case, right? We get judges like Gorsuch and Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett and James Ho, who wrote a decision comparing using like an environmental law to say that like people should get to sue or should get to like hold women accountable and like stop them from having abortions because there's like an aesthetic benefit to them having a baby for the doctor. That's what we're dealing with if we don't get these judges confirmed, right? So we desperately need these judges confirmed. I know I, as like a queer person, as a non-binary person, like Project 2025 is pretty clear about how they feel about queer people and trans people, and like it's not great, gang. And these judges are the people who are going to get to decide whether these like crazy laws that they're going to pass in states like my home state of Texas are constitutional, are going to be enforced. And so it's really critical that we get these judges on the bench. And when you're talking to your friends and family, like you have to talk about it from how it impacts you, right? Because most people, unless they're me or Marge or Savante or like the 12 other people who watch C-SPAN on the regular, they don't care about what it means about the balance of a circuit, or like a lot of people like don't even have time to care about what it means for our democracy, right? Like they're worried about how they're going to put food on the table and if they're going to get fired from their job for who they love and if their marriage is going to stay legal. And like we have to share those personal stories of what these confirmations mean to us. And that's going to be important both now in this time when we can confirm really positive judges and in the next administration when we're talking about trying to keep some of these people off the bench. You know, in the fights that we had together, Keith mentioned some really amazing examples with folks like Thomas Farr and folks like, oh my goodness, I'm going to, Satan's Plan, Jeff Mateer. Thank you. To my own brain, I guess. But folks like Jeff Mateer, I mean, they pose real, tangible threats to our communities, to our families, to our kids, and like that kind of storytelling, that kind of sharing with your neighbors, with your communities, and even with your senator, can be what actually helps move the needle to keep these folks off the courts, the bad folks off the courts, and get the good ones on the courts.
Yeah, because this is look. I try and tell folks all the time: if you can only do a little, nothing goes longer than fighting for fair courts, right? Because each presidential race now costs $2 billion. Okay, I trust that they use the dozens of dollars that I donated personally. Well, dozens of dollars. It's almost like a hidden power of government. And folks don't realize, like, everybody's talking about, oh, we're going to build a wall. Okay, they're going to build a wall. When the federal government, when the executive branch tries to seize private property to take that wall, who decides if they can or they can't? The courts do. When detention facilities are going to be built by the U.S. military outside of 50 major metropolitan areas in the next 6 months, who's going to decide actually if they can or they can't? The courts will decide. If your teacher gets disappeared in the middle of the night because he taught sex ed, disappeared, who's going to decide if that's okay or not? It's the courts. Everybody tries to blame or credit the president for everything, from the price of eggs to what happens on the streets. These are co-equal branches of government, and we have not invested not nearly enough in making sure that this branch is fair, that this branch is just, and there's a big chance to change that. If the folks are still on, I just want to encourage you to not only contact your senators, but any organization you see, like say, I don't know, People for the American Way, that's fighting for this, or the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, or the National Women's Law Center, or the Leadership Conference. Those organizations you should sign up to join and read their emails, particularly from me, read my emails, and take action. A little bit of action here is a really, really long way. I want to, just because I think it's appropriate for us to, because if there's a dean of this work, that is to say, keeping your eyes on the courts, both in DC and across the country, the dean of that work is Marge Baker. So I want to ask Marge, what would you say in closing in the last 5 minutes? And you, sorry. Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this fair-minded judges who are committed to delivering justice for all can make all the difference in the world. It is a necessary fight. It is a worthy fight. It is the effort has to be. We have to put in the same kind of effort that we've seen on the other side, because what they want are judges and justices who will drive a political agenda, and that's what we're seeing right now. So the fight is worth it. It's absolutely worth it. To your point, Svante, about whether the calls matter, yesterday was a great case in point. I walked into 10 offices unannounced, and I mentioned judges, and they knew what I was talking about immediately. Front office of the Senate's office, Senator's office, they do lots of things. They knew they were getting calls. They knew the public was out there raising concerns about it. So it does make a difference. And the last thing I'd say, and I think for me, it sort of ties back to the conversation we had with Elizabeth Warren. We want to push the senators to run as hard as they can, as forcefully as they can through the tape. But we also want to take the joy of the moment of being in that fight with others who are like-minded, with others who share that agenda. Yesterday, one of the best things in the world for like this really, really, really bad time we've been through, it was so joyful. It was so joyful to be seeing the faces light up of somebody who we handed them a sleeping bag and said, we're here because we want your senator to stay there and sleep all night if necessary to get this done. And there was this incredible joyful response to that. Oh, we get it, right? So let's not lose the joy in this fight either, and the joy of being in community around something that matters so deeply to all of our lives and all of our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives. It is like so very important.
And I'm going to capitalize on that joy and give you like specific action items as our friend Charlie brings folks back to the table here. So one, we've said it. I'm going to say it again. Call your senator. I don't want to hear it. Call your senator. We've got a call script online at people4.org. If you want to take a look at it, you can absolutely use it. You don't even have to think about what to say. You can just read the call script if you want. 2, I want you to find at least 3 friends and talk to them, take them to coffee, call them on the phone, do whatever you need to do, talk to them about judges and why judges are important to you specifically, to your community, to your town, but also just to you specifically. Why do getting these people confirmed matter to you? And how do you want those friends to show up for you in the next administration when it comes to judges? Can they come to protest with you? Can they make calls with you? Can they post on social media with you? Y'all can sit on the couch and watch Netflix and post about judges. I do it all the time. It's super fun. And then 3, there's actually a map. If you're watching this on people4.org, it's right down below. And if not, if you go to people4.org to the Fair Courts section, there's actually a map where you can click and see what judges and what judicial vacancies are open in your area. So that'll show you the judges that are like pending right now that we need confirmed. And it's also going to give you a little look into where we're going to have big fights in the next administration, right? Where it's possible that we could have fights over judges. And so I want you to like be looking, and if your state has a vacancy, especially one without a nominee, I'm going to need you to get talking to your friends, right? Because we need those people ready to go and ready to take action for fair courts now and in the next administration. So those are my action items for you if you came to this call.
Meg, too humble as always, she built this map. It is so cool, and it will make you look smart in front of your friends. So like it's like a map of the country. If you can find your state on it, which is like, but if you can find your state on it, you just click boom, and it zooms out. It's like, this is the circuit, this is the district, these are the judges, this is their faith, this is their bio, these are the vacancies. And just like that, this, what can seem opaque to those of us who didn't go to law school, and what can seem like very, suddenly when you look at this map and you click and you see and you go, oh, these are very powerful people. And there's just a handful of them. And this is what they look like. And this is their background. Check out this map. It's really cool. And I think once you play around with it, it'll spur you to further action and will help you share. I know we were only supposed to go to 8. I don't know if we have questions from folks. Demetria and Lena and Keith have stayed on. If any questions have come in the chat, I don't want to abuse your time because you were all very kind to join us here. So I will, if it's okay, I will let us all go by saying that do what Meg said, and then do what Marge said. Do what Demetria and Lena and Keith said. And if you need to hear again what they said, you should check out the streams, which will all be online. But also just follow these organizations. Campaigns pains me as a politician, a recovering politician, to say. But campaigns are not, in fact, the most important thing in the world. They start and they end. But like, our government doesn't start and end. Society doesn't start and end. And so the fight to actually make this change can continue whether you win or lose in any particular November. And so these organizations, NAACP, Leadership Conference, Alliance for Justice, and People for the American Way, are the ones that I hope you will keep up with and boost and become leaders of. I just started going to People for the American Way stuff, okay? 14 years later, they let me run the place. So like, I encourage you all to actually, no, if you want to do that, don't join my organization. I need this job. Truly, this is how we make a better country, and you can do it with joy, and you can do it with heart. We need this. So thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.